mean, you're like 30 years old. So, how many decades you got?
Add 22 years to that. But you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I was in Senegal last year. I got to go to Black Rock, Senegal.
Oh, wow.
And it was a life-changing experience.
Yeah.
I know Ta-Nehisi was also Senegal at some point too. And what really struck me, I learned so many things. But what struck me the most was how they were outside of this bubble, whatever this bubble is. What I mean is like, this is a capitalistic, imperial, colonial, patriarchal, whatever you want to call it, thing that we're always inside of. And we're always like trying to push up against it, make a space for ourselves. And in America, I mean, how can you do it when you've been devalued from birth? If Joe Blow white guy is $1, and then the brother is 80 cents, and the sister is 72 cents, that kind of thing. But in Senegal, I didn't believe in that stuff. We traveled the entire country. We drove up to like the border with Mauritania, went out to the beaches. And time again, what I noticed was the presence, like just being in the moment, constantly. There was a family, this young brother, probably in his late 30s, owned a restaurant right on the beach. And he told us that there's like a very small, like sort of white colonial neighborhood. They kept asking him to buy the property. I think his dad opened that restaurant like in the 50s, stuff like that. Wow. He's like, I'm like, well, how much do they offer you? Bro? He's like, like $10 million. Somebody. He's like, we're never going to sell this.
Yes.
We're never going to sell this. And the reason why, and I saw it with my own eyes, I remember going out on a little boat, we were riding around, we saw whales. We saw like whales like breaching and spewing the water.
Wow.
So that's on that side. I turn around and there's a bunch of little kids, these little boys on these little like rubber rafts, little tams on their heads, floating by. And then I look beyond them to the coastline, and it's like 1,000 young kids like yelling like this, and then like this grown men behind them in like a big rowboat going, "Go boys, go!" Oh. And I'm like, "What is this?" He's like, "Oh, that's the religious summer camp." And I thought about, I've never seen that in America ever, not even once in my whole life.
Right.
Not in California, not in the Carolinas or Virginia. And the beauty of that, and it's asking, so what do y'all like do here? And like, we just live our lives.
Right.
We're not like trying to open up these 500 companies or like be the biggest rapper. We're just being with our families. And it's such a wholesome thing. And the last thing I kept asking them about was these diseases of drugs and guns. And they would just laugh at me. They would go, drugs and guns? They try and bring it in. You see it sometimes. But if you were to rob somebody for something with a gun, your great grandma would know about it in 20 minutes.
Right.
Or if you took drugs, the same thing. You would be so ashamed by having that person you love know about that whatever pleasure you got from that would disappear. Right. And you go from positive to negative, just like that. And that communal feel was so important to them. And of course, here we've lost that. We were stolen that first. And we fight to maintain it, but it's so hard to keep that going.
Well, they say, I mean, in so much public health research that the greatest wounds come when you are in very deeply unequal environments. The inequality is more damaging than not having much.
That's right.
Right. That it's like that you feel the inequality. So it's a very tiny example, but being someplace where I could be in the water all day and have like, short, I didn't have much stuff with me. I didn't look at my phone. I wasn't interested in shopping. I'm always looking there were all these distraction behaviors that just floated away because I was just centered. Wow. And I think that's what we live like. Our consumer oriented society makes us, we move through distraction and distraction and stimulation and the blue light from the phone and the taking of the pills and the drinking to relax because we're stressed and that cycle. And I guess for me, one of the things I'm trying to think about now is in the long list of what we are tasked with in this moment, some of it has to do with self-care. And I don't mean in that like go to a spa day type way, but I mean in terms of what you're talking about. Because I think being in community is a form of self-care, right?
Well, you have children.
I do, yes.
What do you want from them in the future? Like you were saying, we probably won't see whatever is being broken apart here. Do you want them out there on the line? Do you want them like, this is live our lives? If they're creative and artistic, what do you want them to do with themselves?
I want them to borrow language from Baldwin, go the way their blood beats. I want them to to love and be loved and have a sense of purpose and be able to take care of themselves, right? I want them to be able to, keep a roof over their heads and eat. But we all have different callings. I want them to feel free enough to meet their callings. And I think there's something, I think parents do this awful thing often of colonizing their children's futures.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Right. That's not for me to decide. I can share values though, and I can help facilitate the things that they decide they want to do. But my children know that even when they do things that I'm not really keen on, I love them to death, or love them to life. Yeah. So, I also think sometimes they know better.
That is true.
Right?
That is true. I don't have kids, but I have a lot of students. And I'll often ask questions to the class, like, hey, let's talk about this thing. Yeah. And to have that enlightenment from a generation that doesn't have the same, frankly, damage that maybe I have, as somebody who's been around for a while. Been want to ask you this for a while.
Oh, okay.
I know you read a lot.
Yes.
There's this long-standing question. I've seen essays about it throughout the decades. This idea of who are we as Black people speaking to?
Yeah.
And why are we speaking? So, for example, if I read the top 10 books by white authors, there's this variety of issues from simple ennui. Oh my goodness, life is so hard because, I didn't get to go to the college I wanted to go to.
Right.
So like sort of this denigration of like this really horrible stuff, like this trauma stuff. But then often for us, there's like an expectation of us speaking to the race issue, as they would call it in the old days, or the Black issue, or speaking to our trauma, like trying to offer solutions. And I feel like very few of us are outside of that space. So how do you think about that issue, if it is an issue for you?
It's interesting. I as a writer, I always want to acknowledge the fact of white supremacy, but that isn't the driving force of my work. And more of it is wanting to actually remind us, hold up the mirror to what has been extraordinary in Black life. But I also think, it's so funny. I used to say this a lot about children's literature when my children were young. I was like, where are the fun, quirky Black kid books that aren't about adversity or injustice, right? All because, and I even think about this. So, this might get me in trouble, but I even think about this with respect to the way we talk or think about enslavement. Mm-hmm. Like people were born, lived, and died enslaved. Absolutely. And they still laughed, and they had friends, and they fell in love. Absolutely. And they had favorite meals. And so I think we have to actually be really serious about the fullness of what it means to be a human being.
I thought about that so much. Yeah. I remember Brother Robert Jones wrote The Prophets.
Yes.
And I read that book, and I remember before I read it, I always said I would never write a book set in that time period because the expectation was to show how these ladies and men suffered so much, and the kids suffered so much. But he put so much joy in it.
Yes, he did.
And it's like opened a space for me as a writer to go, okay, well, how would I do this if I was going to write in this time period? And my wife and I, we had this rule. We couldn't watch a movie about slavery until after a year, like a little embargo on it.
Okay.
12 Years a Slave. We waited a whole year after they came out before we watched it. And of course, we know what happens in that film.
Right.
Lupita Nyong'o, those characters, my goodness.
I have a problem with that film. Go ahead. You can go back to it. Yeah. Okay.
And so much of the art is doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we get in trouble. I talk about like film, like American fiction. It's just issues I have here and there, like what was it actually for and like what is it doing? But my test is always like if I'm in front of a majority Black crowd, how they respond to it. Because I've done events here in this space for all of them. Like my actual mother and her two friends that have been with her for 60 years in the very front row. And I can tell if they like, boy.
Really? Okay. Right.
I want to see like.
Okay. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I know when I was writing, my American Daughters book, I kept thinking about, okay, I'm not going to show this, and this, because you always see these terrible moments. But what about them laughing, cracking jokes together?
Yes.
And showing care for each other. That's a beautiful thing to have. And of course, you got to do that too.
Yeah. Okay. But I want to stay on American Dad for a minute, because I think that a piece of that for me as a reader is also you show such deep love for Black women in a way that isn't like the thing where like, oh, look, I'm a brother and I care about, but it's actually to see Black women fully.